Have you ever heard someone say, "I want to kill myself"? Did you know how to respond? Today we're going to talk to people who are dedicated to preventing suicide. Let's talk about it.
Welcome to My Healthy Mind. I'm Elizabeth Atkins and this is Michael Hunter. Each week on My Healthy Mind, we talk openly about difficult situations that can impact mental health and well-being. We discuss a variety of issues that many people struggle with on a daily basis and are sometimes too afraid to talk about.
Our guests include people who are willing to tell their personal stories about how they've overcome challenging problems, ranging from mental health issues to abuse to addiction. By sharing their personal struggles, our guests give us the opportunity to talk openly about these subjects and answer questions that you, our viewers, may have.
We also invite experts and experienced professionals to talk about valuable resources for individuals and families to help them begin a journey toward better health. Michael, let's tell our viewers what we're talking about today.
Elizabeth, today we're going to talk about suicide prevention. Eastern Michigan University, through a 3-year federal grant, is helping to prevent suicides, eliminate stigma related to mental illness, and promote help-seeking behaviors among students. With us from Eastern Michigan University are Ellen Gold and Lisa Lauterbach, co-project directors of the grant called Safe Now. It stands for Stigma and Fear End Now.
Ellen is also Assistant Vice President of Student Wellbeing at Eastern Michigan, and she oversees several university departments. And Lisa is the university's Director of Counseling and Psychological Services.
And later in the program, we'll meet 2 people who share their personal stories about suicide. And now they're on a mission to end the stigma. Please join us after the break.
Tyler, is everything okay?
Yeah, Grandma, everything's fine.
I was feeling so alone.
I was going through a really difficult time.
I didn't want to bother anyone.
I didn't think they'd understand.
It was tough at first, but I did it.
I'm glad I asked for help.
I asked my teacher.
I asked my dad.
You can do this.
Whatever it is, ask for help.
If you're thinking about suicide or need support, call the Trevor Lifeline. Trained counselors are there to help 24/7.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Today we're talking with Ellen Gold and Lisa Lauterbach about the Campus Suicide Prevention Grant that Eastern Michigan University recently received. Ellen, can you please share with us what this grant is and how it's helping students?
Certainly. Our Campus Suicide Prevention Grant is called Safe Now at EMU, and that's an acronym that stands for Stigma and Fear End Now at Eastern Michigan University. We've designed the grant around 4 primary goals. The first one is to increase the number of students at high risk that will seek help, services, supports. The second one is to decrease the negative attitudes and myths around mental illness and suicide that are framed in stigma, fear, and just a lack of knowledge. The third goal is to increase the number of students, staff, and faculty who can recognize and respond to students that are in distress, especially with mental health distress. And the fourth large goal is to create a community network of students, staff, faculty, offices, departments, student organizations, and community members who work together to create a safe environment to talk about the issues and to support individuals in need.
Lisa, and can you tell us why it's so important that such a program is on a college campus?
College campuses are spending a lot of energy now looking at mental health. Probably in the last 5 to 10 years, there's been an increase in interest in the mental health of our students. And part of the reason that we're really focusing on the suicide prevention grant is that suicide is the second leading cause of death for college-age students. And we know that the vast majority of people who die by suicide are not receiving any kind of mental health treatment or services at the time of their death. So there are people who are hurting, that are in a great deal of distress, and not seeking any services. And we also know that a person that comes in for mental health treatment with even thoughts of suicide are much less likely to attempt suicide if they're receiving services. So it's important for our campus to get out information about the resources that are available, but also important, as Ellen was talking about reducing the stigma around mental health, to making it okay to go in and seek services or to take medication, to see a therapist, and to have our campus communicate a culture that is accepting of individuals that are struggling with a mental health problem.
So what is it about being on a college campus that makes students so vulnerable to suicide?
So I think there are a number of factors that make college students vulnerable to mental health distress and suicide in particular. Part of it is that students sometimes come to us already having received services. They are already suffering from a depression or bipolar disorder, mental health diagnosis that puts them at risk for suicide. There are also increased pressures about being on your own for the first time, to having to do things independently, to be maybe living away from home for the first time. And so anything that sort of adds extra stress to a person can make somebody more in distress. And I think lastly, the thing I'd like to say is that a number of the significant mental health problems that we know of, for instance, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia, many of these mental illnesses, their typical age of onset is somewhere around late adolescence, early adulthood, college-age students. And so it isn't always the fact that they are in college that's causing the stress, but this is the time in the life that we know that these illnesses develop, and they are also in college.
And are there any particular groups of students who might be especially at risk?
The grant itself seeks to reach out to all students across campus. However, at the same time, we know there are vulnerable, specific populations, and we on this grant have targeted 3 target populations to receive additional support and education, and those include our LGBT community of students, our students who are veterans on the campus, and our honors college students. And some people might say, why honors college? Well, the highest achievers sometimes put the most pressure on themselves, as well as parents and others putting pressure on them. They might not be as inclined to tell someone, I need help, or I'm failing this class and I need a tutor. They keep more inside. So we have targeted those 3 subgroups to work with as well.
Ellen and Lisa, thank you for that information. When we return after a short break, they'll share the specific programs Safe Now is offering, as well as risk factors for suicide. We'll be right back.
Jenna, is everything okay in there?
Just a minute, Grandma.
I was feeling so alone.
I was going through a really difficult time.
I didn't want to bother anyone.
I didn't think they'd understand.
It was tough at first, but I did it.
I'm glad I asked for help.
I asked my teacher.
I asked my dad.
You can do this.
Whatever it is, ask for help.
If you're thinking about suicide or need support, call the Trevor Lifeline. Trained counselors are there to help 24/7.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Today we're learning a lot from Ellen Gold and Lisa Lauterbach about Eastern Michigan University's comprehensive mental illness and suicide prevention program. Ellen, can you please tell us about some of the programs that you have in place now?
Sure. We are doing several different types of programming on the campus, ranging from having students volunteer to tell their personal stories of hope on video and use them on our website, to posters with actual factoids about mental health and suicide prevention, using students, our own university students on the posters, to larger events, campus-wide and community events. One I'd like to explain right now is one we recently held called Send Silence Packing. It's a national exhibit that you apply for, and we were selected as a campus to have the Send Silence Packing tour come to our campus. And this is a tour that brings 1,100 backpacks to the campus. We lay them outdoors in a grassy area, all 1,100 of them. About 250 of them have stories on them that are stories from families, friends, loved ones that have shared stories about the passing of their children or best friend to suicide. The stories are powerful. The campus invites the community into this event, and we had thousands of individuals walk in and around and amongst the backpacks, read the stories, share conversations, share tears, share hope. They wrote messages of hope, and this is a great way for us to create awareness on the campus about the issues and the myths and what we can do to make a positive difference and where the resources are. The second area we have is a training component, and we have some specific training that we're introducing, and there is an online component. And we're excited about the online component. There's one that's for students, and there's a separate one for our faculty and staff. And it's avatar in nature, it's interactive, so our students can make decisions based on a scenario. It takes them a certain direction. Some of the choices are very positive, some are not so good, and it'll help you to think through, do you really want to make this choice, and helps people to redirect back. And this is a great tool because they can do it in their office, in their room, on their own computer, whenever they want to.
And Lisa, talk to us about the risk factors associated with suicide. I know you do some training, so how does that work?
Sure. Let me comment on both risk factors and warning signs. And sometimes we use those two terms interchangeably, but they really are different. And to give you an example, I'll talk for a minute about heart disease or heart attack. A risk factor of having a heart attack might be that you are overweight, you're a smoker, you're inactive. These are things that put you at greater risk for having a heart attack. But none of those things mean that you will have a heart attack or that you are currently having a heart attack. In terms of suicide, a risk factor for suicide would be something like having a mood disorder, like depression or bipolar disorder, would put a person at higher risk of making a suicide attempt. A substance abuse problem is also another risk factor. Neither of those things by themselves mean that a person will make a suicide attempt. Another risk factor would be if you have had a prior suicide attempt, if you've made an attempt in the past, it puts you at slightly higher risk of making an attempt again. So that's risk factors. When we're talking about warning signs, then we're talking about situations that a person can look for that somebody is already thinking about suicide. And those things would be somebody who's talking about suicide, or they're talking a lot about wanting to die, or saying things, or maybe writing things. On a college campus, sometimes students will communicate that in their writing, in an email to a professor, or in their English paper or some other paper that they write in campus. They might write about suicidal thinking. That would be a warning sign that somebody is seriously considering suicide if they're talking about it.
Are there other behaviors like lack of hygiene or sleep patterns, eating less or more, gaining weight?
All of those things are indications that a person might be very troubled, might have a great deal of depression, and certainly somebody that you'd want to ask how they're doing, and maybe ask them if they've had any thoughts of suicide. Absolutely.
And after discovering that, then I'm sure you guys have referrals for professional counselors at your disposal as well?
We do, and the counseling center offers services for students, and we have an after-hours service if students are having a great deal of distress on the weekend or an evening or a holiday when the university is closed. Eastern students can call our counseling center and talk to a real person after hours about whatever is going on. If they need some immediate help, the people that take those phone calls can direct them to services.
There are other hotlines that we provide for them on the website. You know, there's the Trevor Lifeline. LGBT students might be more inclined to go to the Trevor Lifeline. There's a Veterans Lifeline. There's the General Suicide Prevention Hotline. So there are a number of different lifelines that we put on as resources on our website and all of our materials as well.
Thank you, Ellen and Lisa, for sharing all of that information about Safe Now. When we return, we will have two guests who will bravely share their personal stories to help end the stigma of suicide after the break.
I was feeling so alone.
I was going through a really difficult time.
I didn't want to bother anyone.
I didn't think they'd understand.
It was tough at first, but I did it.
I'm glad I asked for help.
I asked my teacher.
I asked my dad.
You can do this.
Whatever it is, ask for help.
If you're thinking about suicide or need support, call the Trevor Lifeline. Trained counselors are there to help 24/7.
Stress, depression, and severe mental illness can happen to anyone. Team Mental Health Services has been helping those struggling with these conditions in southeastern Michigan. Within 24 hours of reaching out to our team, members receive psychiatric evaluations and begin the necessary treatment for recovery. Team Mental Health Services prides itself on going the extra mile for its members.
And it was towards the 6th court date. I finally stood up and said, I can handle this process the rest of the way. And it was all because of the motivation and encouragement I got from Team Mental Health staff.
Team Mental Health Services, because we care and you can.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Now you'll meet Diane and Bethany Boyk. Both have been personally touched by suicide, and both are strong advocates for eliminating the stigma associated with mental illness. Diane, we understand that you lost your son George when he was 20 to suicide. Can you tell us what happened?
Sure. George was an average teenager, popular, an athlete, just normal, except for a couple bumps in his life of getting type 1 diabetes at age 13 and having to come out of his freshman year of college and have hip surgery. During that time, he became bipolar. We saw some odd behavior. He did tell us that he had tried to take his life, and we had came to a complete shock. We got him help, and he was doing okay. He did do some self-medicating with alcohol and drugs, which is so common among mental illness. And then he had started a nonprofit in Detroit to help the city, and he was going back to Ann Arbor to start his sophomore year, and he also closed the nonprofit because it wasn't going as planned. And that particular act, I guess, was just more than he could handle. And he took his life that day, August 26th of 2013.
And how has George's passing motivated you to advocate to get rid of the stigma of suicide?
Well, I had two choices. I could either, crawl in a hole and cry, and that's not my personality. So I am proactive, and I feel like I have, through my story and my passion, I can help somebody else. And if I help one person, that's all I need. But I've really, along with a friend and cohort, Linda Akins, we have plowed forward in Ann Arbor and elsewhere around the country to try to make change with talking about mental illness and not having it be such a stigma attached.
And Bethany, you're doing the very same thing from a different perspective. You have attempted suicide in the past and you've dealt with mental illness. Can you tell us your story, please?
Yes. When I was 13, my father was sent to prison and I developed depression and insomnia. And it just started like ruining my life, and I wasn't able to do everything that I wanted to do or get different things done. It got really bad at one point, and I had attended a family member's funeral, and I remember just being really upset, not because that they were dead, but I wished I was dead. And that's when I attempted suicide, and it was really bad. I was misdiagnosed for 11 years, so I was taking the wrong medications. I was originally diagnosed with depression, but really I'm schizoaffective. So
what does schizoaffective mean?
It's schizophrenia and bipolar combined. I've taken over 32 different medications in order to help control my symptoms. And it hasn't been until just about the past few months that I found a combination that is like working for me.
And now that you've arrived at a good treatment level and medication, are you in a position now where you're advocating to help others not get to the point where they want to commit suicide?
I've been telling my story and hoping that through my own experience, I can help other people who are like thinking about suicide or contemplating ending their life. But I'm doing it all like verbally.
And do you go to speak to groups, or how do you do that?
Oh, I used to work at a place called Wayne County Mental Health Authority, and I was the stigma busting region. So we went to different community mental health agencies in Detroit, and we talked about stigma of mental illness, and we did presentations to help people and to understand what the stigma is and how to stop it.
We keep talking about the word stigma, but what is it? Could both of you please tell us, what is the stigma?
Stigma is like a mark of disgrace on a person, and it makes you, it puts you in a box, and it traps people in that box.
And so by telling your story, you're helping others understand that it's okay to talk about suicide, to talk about depression, certainly to talk about mental illness like you would talk about any other illness. And so you're being very, very effective in that sense.
But also to show how common it is. This is something that, because it's not talked about, people think no one but them is dealing with it. So once you see the numbers out there of depressed and bipolar and schizophrenia and all these different mental health issues, just knowing someone else has it. That's why these peer-to-peer support groups and what I'm trying to get even into high schools, just a life skills class so kids can learn. We have to take care of our physical self, but also our mental self.
And Bethany, I understand you wrote a poem you would like to share with us.
Yes, this is dedicated to my 10th grade English teacher who helped save my life in so many ways. And it's called I Choose Life. I am unsure that you are aware of what I just did. I chose to not give in. I chose to stay above the ground. I fought the monster inside of me and I won. Never thinking that moment was possible, because beating hopelessness, that's a thing that kills people like me. It's the pain and the suffering that we all feel, and this is our life. People with mental illness, they struggle, and you can't see it, so most people dismiss it. They have no idea what it's like to feel like you have nothing left. It's despair. Yet you can't see it, so they say it's not there. People that never experienced it have no idea what pain is. The pain of contemplating your own life, deciding if it's time to die. Have you ever been on the edge of life or death? You probably haven't, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Some may. And it's a day where you decide if you can live with the monster inside, and let me tell you, it's not very easy. Yet I survived. I'm a survivor and nobody knows. I fought a battle against myself and won. Not just one time, but countless times. I'm a fighter and I am someone that can persevere because I am strong. And it's my job to defend myself, to allow myself to die when I'm supposed to.
Wow.
Thank both of you for being here today. We want to express our sincere appreciation to both Bethany Boyk and Diane Orley for their courage and advocacy to remove the stigma associated with suicide. They've given us and our viewers the opportunity to start having these conversations at home, in schools, and in the workplace. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Jenna, is everything okay in there?
Just a minute, Grandma.
I was feeling so alone.
I was going through a really difficult time.
I didn't want to bother anyone.
I didn't think they'd understand.
It was tough at first, but I did it.
I'm glad I asked for help.
I asked my teacher.
I asked my dad.
You can do this.
Whatever it is, ask for help.
If you're thinking about suicide or need support, call the Trevor Lifeline. Trained counselors are there to help 24/7.
Welcome back to My Healthy Mind. Michael, that was such an inspiring and informative show. I learned so much about such a serious topic.
Yeah, I couldn't believe that so many people on college campuses are at risk for committing suicide. And I'm so grateful for the program because if we didn't have programs like Safe Now, no telling how many more lives would end.
It's ironic because we think of college as a wonderful time in someone's life when they're having fun, they're meeting new people, they're learning, they're deciding who they are and what they'll be in life. And yet it can be the exact opposite, and it can lead to tragedy because it's very difficult. There's pressure, there's questions, there's insecurity, there's isolation.
And people don't realize what the next person is going through. Like Bethany was saying that all of the pressures in her life were bottled up, but nobody knew about it, and she attempted suicide. And how many other people are in that same position? And now through the program Safe Now, we get a chance to encourage people again not to go through with it.
I was really struck by the courage that Diane and Bethany had in speaking out about their own tragedies and how they're using them to help others. And I'm thrilled that our guests today were able to talk about these wonderful programs that are aggressively seeking out young people to help them. They're not programs where the students have to go to them. They're putting it out there, like the backpack display and the posters.
Elizabeth, before we close today, we want to remind you, our My Healthy Mind viewers, that no topics about mental health and wellness are off limits on our show. In fact, we encourage you to let us know what topics you want us to highlight. Please visit our website at myhealthymind.com. You'll find some helpful resources along with a convenient way to contact us. We keep your information private. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.